Thanks very much, David, and thank you all for coming here this afternoon. Cautionary statement, forward-looking statement. Exploration is a risky business. We take it very seriously. You should too. Please take a look at our forward-looking statement on the website. Take the time to do that. All right, so what is Nuclear Fuels? Nuclear Fuels is a uranium exploration company focused on a roll-front uranium project in the Powder River Basin, Wyoming. It is an ISR amenable project, and you've heard a fair bit from John Cash and Bill Sheriff on ISR recovery, in situ recovery. So mobilizing uranium with groundwater and then putting it through a resin bed, capturing it and pumping the water back down. Very low impact, very low cost as well. We're very focused on our exploration and doing as much as we can, moving our projects forward quickly. We continue to add to our acreage in Wyoming as well as in other locations, but with a key focus on the Powder River Basin, building on that basis. One of the most interesting aspects of our company structure is Encore Energy, who you heard earlier here today talking about being a producer, has a back-end right on the KC project. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we go along, but that's a really important aspect in how our company is structured, focused, and is looking to develop and build. Okay. Got a lot of really good people in the company as well. We'll talk about that. And we're in the right market. Obviously, uranium is the place to be today, but it's going to be the place to be in 10 years. And that's a really important thing. We're not looking at a flash in the pan, 3-year cycle. Oh, look, we've made something into a production story and the market fell out from underneath us. We expect this to be something where we can progress projects, develop them, build value, deliver value. Cap structure, we just did a financing in January for 6.4 million Canadian. So we're well cashed right now. We've got about 71 million shares fully diluted. Our capital structure, Encore has I'm sorry, this is incorrect. Encore should be 17.3% interest in the company. Managers and insiders are 7.9%, so we're very vested. A very significant portion of, I think, 65% of Encore's and management insiders are escrowed, so we're very focused on what the company's doing. One of the other interesting things here is 40% of our shareholder base is institutional, and very few project exploration development companies you'll see out there have that kind of base. And I think the reason for that is because of the long-term vision of the KC project. Great people on our board and in our management. Bill Sheriff is our chairman. You heard from him a little earlier at Encore, which is, of course, a production-focused company. He's very excited about KC as well, and essentially KC was spun out of Encore into Nuclear Fuels, and he's sort of stayed with it because he's excited about the exploration aspects of it as well. David Miller was the only other person out there who managed to pick up ground before we did in the KC district, and we convinced him to come onto the board with us too. Gene Spearing and Larry Lahausen, great explorationists. We see these guys out in the field, talking with our field geos, talking about the exploration program. They're very much involved. Rich Munson just joined us. He was part of Energy Fuels back in the 80s when it was really the only uranium producer in the US at the White Mesa Mill. So great people. And we've got great people and staff at the site level as well. What are we about? We are about drilling holes in the ground, defining uranium resources. Key focus is our projects in Wyoming, the KC and the Powder River Basin, and then just south of there, Bobcat and Shirley Basin, and Boot Heel south of there. We also have, these are all ISR amenable targets, roll front uranium targets. Lisbon Valley is a conventional mining target, sort of a bit of back burner project right now. Moonshine is ISR amenable as well, in part at least, and that is in Arizona. We also have a higher grade uranium and rare earth project up in Labrador, but we will not be talking about that today. Focusing in on the Powder River Basin, You can see the pickaxe symbols on the page. Those are projects that are licensed to produce, and the majority of them are going back into restart. I think Highland in the south is Cameco, and they haven't made a decision yet, but they were selling that asset and they took it off the market. And I suspect we'll see that going forward as a producer in the near future. Casey, you can see from the scale of the claim outline, or the project area outline, is a very large project. You could fit Irigaray, Christensen Ranch, North Butte, and Nichols Ranch all within the boundaries of our project area. So very large, lots of potential. Zooming in again, you can see in red, Irigaray, Christensen Ranch, North Butte, Nichols Ranch. Those are licensed producers. The gray, Hank and Reno Creek, are projects that are in permitting and moving towards development. Within the yellow area, which is our project area, the black lines are roll fronts. Those are mapped areas that have known uranium enrichment in sedimentary rocks that is amenable to ISR development. The red blotches in it are small resource areas. This project was last worked on really in the late 70s and 80s by a subsidiary of Detroit Edison Electric, and they were looking to build pounds in the ground for their reactor fleet in Michigan. With the early 80s, that kind of fell out of fashion. The ground was dropped and the data was lost. The last uranium cycle, there were 4 or 5 companies that had pieces of this district. No one did very much work. They had this map, but they didn't have any drill holes. The genesis of really this, the project itself and the spin out into nuclear fuels, was finding 3,700 historic drill holes for this district. It's kind of the Rosetta Stone, giving us a leap forward in our ability to develop resources and target the highest grade areas and move things forward. We've actually picked up another 100 holes within that area, and I think we've got a few more on the way that we've also found. Historically, because they were looking for 40 years of uranium supply for their operations, they weren't looking to develop mineable resources immediately. They were looking at the scale of the district, and that's why we have small resources but very large area of definition of near surface targets and things like that. So they left us with a lot of opportunity, to do infill, where we know there are roll fronts, but they weren't drill tested or they weren't drilled in definition, but also to drill below the first layer, and we'll explain that a little bit later too here. Go along. One other thing I should probably talk about is, and it's been said earlier in this room, is Wyoming is an agreement state. That means that the federal regulations devolve to the state level, and that makes it much easier to permit a uranium operation in Wyoming, and actually Texas is the other opportunity state, agreement state. Those 2 places you can move relatively quickly to bring things through permitting and get them towards production. And it's, I think, an exceptional opportunity in a hot market to be in that position. Looking at the basin and cross-section, you can see there's a number of levels of formations. There's 3 formations. The Wasatch, the Fort Union, and the Lance, which host uranium roll front mineralization. If you go to the center of the basin, the Fort Union and the Lance are too deep to economically drill and pump, but they all come to surface within the KC project. So what we have there is the opportunity to pick them off a whole lot easier, less expensively, drilling 1 hole and hitting more than 1 formation. So we've got more bang for our exploration buck, and that's kind of a very important thing. Let's go here. What have we done? So we actually were drilling this in 2023 in November and December. We shut down just a little bit before Christmas. We managed to drill 89 drill holes in that time on 2 targets, the saddle and the spur zones. You can see there are historic resource areas that stretch up into the northwest of the project. So lots of additional projects or targets for us to be chasing. But fundamentally, we had a great opportunity here to test, and we did prove the historic resource, the historic grades are in fact relevant and correct. We drilled 29 intervals that have a grade thickness of better than 0.3, and that would be the grade times the footage of the whole interval of mineralization, which is a standard for a threshold for economic viability. We also had 6 holes within that package that had multiple intervals of better than 0.3 grade thickness as well. Down at Saddle, we had an area that we had 6.5 feet at 0.189 with a grade thickness of 1.22. Over at Spur, we had 4.5 feet of 0.233 for a grade thickness of 1.06. So really good numbers that were turning up. For comparison, production in the center of the basin, near Gary Christensen Ranch, they're looking at production grades of about 0.07, 0.08. And if you look at their cutoffs are around 0.02. So we've got very robust economic grades for the mineralization that we're seeing. And yeah. Oh, actually, I should say one more thing. So what are we looking to do here this year? So right now we're in the process of doing our next drill permit amendment, and we're looking to actually permit 700 drill holes for the 2024 season. And we also have 2 drill rigs secured and under contract to do that, and we'd hope to begin that probably in May. Other things that we'll see this winter, we'll be looking to unveil additional projects that we've organically brought forward in the Powder River Basin and adjacent areas, that being our key focus. So we'll have a fair bit of news along the way. I guess our second tier project that we would have behind KC would be the Moonshine project in Arizona. There's a historic resource there, about 3.6 million pounds at 0.18 U3O8. This is, again, about twice of what you're looking at for historic grades for production in the Powder River Basin. Very robust numbers. The focus of that historic area is the dark red ore outline. We also have a little cross-hatched area and a open red area. Those 2 areas, we know there was historic drilling, resource definition, but we don't have the data for it. So that provides a very clean and focused target for us to continue to develop. We believe as well the red ore outline extends north onto the ground there. So great opportunity to grow this project. We think it has the potential to be a company maker as well. Boot Heel is in the south of the Shirley Basin. This project as well is it's a little bit lower grade, but it has significant historic resources. It also has very high efficiency in terms of mobilization, so it's actually less expensive to produce than a lot of other projects, which makes it quite an opportune project to have. So why nuclear fuels? We're in the right place. The US is the largest consumer of uranium for nuclear power. It's the smallest producer. 60% of the uranium right now is coming through St. Petersburg. The US utilities and the US government are all very focused on development of domestic uranium supply, puts it in the right spot. We've got an overall growth in the potential demand for uranium that relates to baseload power for green energy. And we also have SMRs that I think are coming down the road at us. It's hard to value SMRs, but it's one of those things where there probably will be some missteps as people try to move through an assembly line process for building power stations. But once they get the hang of it, it will go very fast, and I think it will change the way power is produced in North America at the very least. KC again, very focused. We've got 600 drill hole program there, but I think we have probably a bit more than that going in on our drill permit to give us some flexibility. And we're very focused on expanding resources, but also defining new ones. We actually made one discovery at Saddle on a previously unknown roll front there, and we'll continue to do that kind of thing. The key and most interesting thing about our company is Encore's back in right. So as an explorationist and a development-focused company, one of the key problems that we always have is, oh great, we found a resource, what do we do with it now? I've got to build a new team, I've got to figure out how to do the permitting correctly the first time around, I've got to go and convince my exploration-focused shareholders that they should stick around for the production, permitting, and development of a project. Because we've got about 40% institutional investors who are actually looking down the road at the potential development of KC as a operation, we kind of sidestep that. And we also have Encore coming in on the management and permitting side saying, yeah, we'll take that burden and we'll move this thing forward. And the final thing that I think is really important is, because we're in line to get 2.5 times our exploration dollars back, that gives us the opportunity to continue exploring elsewhere without diluting, staying relevant in the market while we wait for production to start. It's sort of like a triple threat, I think. We've got a great team. We've got a great team on the ground. We've got experienced roll front geologists on our drill rigs. We've got the right people on the board and head office, and we're in the right market for uranium. When we look at uranium stocks, one of the things that you'll see out there right now is that uranium has, the uranium producers and the near-term producers have all jumped. It hasn't trickled down yet into exploration. So it's going to be tier 1 exploration plays that benefit this year, I think. And that's right where we are. So keep an eye on nuclear fuels, and maybe I can answer some questions.